Cimoooooooo! What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. Today I wanted to bring you a discussion on Floodgate Trap Hole, a card that I wasn't exactly aware was coming out of the Dark Illusion until I pulled it at my sneak peek, and I'm really happy that I did because I managed to pick a couple more up because this card is really fucking good. So let's go ahead and dissect why. So for those of you who don't know, Floodgate Trap Hole is a normal trap card. The effect reads that when a monster or monsters is summoned, basically those monster or monsters get flipped face down, and then they can't change their battle position. So basically the best way to put this is, it's a Quaking Mirror Force on summon. Now we all know how good Quaking Mirror Force is. It's a side-worthy card in a lot of slower decks, and basically if you have Quaking Mirror Force on summon, it's ultimately better because the problem with Quaking Mirror Force is that it was a battle trap. So having to basically wait for the battle phase for your opponent to attack to flip it, it had the susceptibility of being able to be popped rather easily. But now when you have the ability to do it on summon, that kind of changes things up entirely. So I wanted to highlight a lot of the good aspects of this card. The first off being, the card doesn't target. Now we're in a format where a lot of cards are basically can't be targeted, can't be destroyed. You know, they have all these like stipulations, built-in protection, things like that. This card doesn't target, so the fact that it doesn't makes it that much more appealing in the fact that, you know, it's just blanket hits the card as long as it was summoned. As long as it's not unaffected by traps, it's basically getting hit by this card, which is pretty neat. Then another aspect of it too that's really good is that it hits multiple cards, so it's not just like if one monster gets summoned, you can only use it on one. You can use this on like an entire fucking pendulum summon if you wanted to. Just think about that. So being able to do something like that, or like a soul charge, or any instance where your opponent would summon like 2+ monsters, flipping them all face down, and then your opponent can't even change their battle positions, that just completely throws a wrench in their plans, and can just completely and utterly fuck them up entirely. Another really cool aspect about this card is that it essentially stops your opponent from doing a lot of specific plays. It hinders any sort of ignition effects, so for example, anything that basically there's an opportunity where your opponent can't like immediately use the effect on summon, like say something like Ignister or anything along those lines, this card's just going to flip it face down and they're not going to get any value out of it whatsoever. So being able to do that also makes it easier to kill as well, because a lot of monsters in the game have very low defense, especially if they have extremely high attack and really good effects. I mean, Ignister, Monarchs, Blue Eyes Chaos Max, like there's so many different instances where this is the case. And then it also prevents different Synchro and Xyz plays as well, because if all the monsters are getting flipped face down, they're not going to be able to do anything with them. So that prevents them from just going off entirely. Again, going back to the Pendulum example, they're not going to be able to go into Ignister, Dynaster, Magister, any of their rank 4 toolbox essentially, which is only good for you because those monsters are also going to be just sitting there until you decide to deal with them, or, you know, maybe they somehow get a Pendulum Sorcerer to pop them off a little bit later on. So that's really good too. Like I said, the fact it also makes just cards that have built-in protection easier to kill. So like I said, take a look at something like Cosmo Dark Destroyer. Now, while Cosmo Dark Destroyer on summon may gain its effect to pop a monster, if you chain this card to the activation, it flips it face down, it doesn't target, so that would work, and then basically it enables you to hit it with cards that do target. So I mean, anything that might bounce it to the hand, like Pleiades or like a Phoenix Wing Wind Blast, just any example of something that might target, it makes it that much easier to remove from the board since it does target. You know, normally you'd have to use something like an Erebus or a Stormforth or something that doesn't target, which can usually be a big pain in the ass. So being able to kind of just make it easier for you to handle big threats like that, it's really beneficial for you because it just makes it so that you don't have to make inoptimal plays necessarily to deal with their boards. You can make the most tempo-based play that works in your favor because now the Dark Destroyer or anything along those lines isn't going to be basically immune to targeting. So that's kind of it for all of the best things about this card. I guess one other random side note, it is searchable off Myrmilio, so if you are still playing Traptrix Myrmilio, it's really good that it's a normal trap because arguably this is probably one of the best whole trap cards that you can search off Myrmilio right now, at least in my opinion, because I mean, being able to flip everything face down is pretty invaluable for a few reasons. I already mentioned with Cosmo that that's pretty good. Look at Burning Abyss. Burning Abyss already struggle immensely with a card like Burying Mirror Force, so you bring this in, not only can you just completely disrupt their board if they play more than one Burning Abyss monster, you can flip one down and destroy all the rest, but when they play something like a Beatrice, you can actually use this on Beatrice. Beatrice can't use its effect since it was summoned by overlaying it on a Dante's due to its stipulation, so it's not like they can chain it or anything. And now Beatrice is just going to be sitting there face down. And why that's so important is that because on your next turn, you don't have to worry about Beatrice basically farfering any of your shit, or using Calcab or Alec or anything like that to help possibly disrupt your play. So that's just extremely, extremely powerful in the Burning Abyss matchup. And again, being able to pop all their monsters as well is really fucking strong. I mean, we see with Flying Sea, Book of Boon, anything like that, just being able to just destroy their boards entirely, and they can't flip them back up. So you can basically just sit on that one monster that they have set until they find a way to clear it. So that's pretty good too. So we talked about Cosmo, we talked about Burning Abyss. Monarchs, this card probably isn't too good because all of their effects trigger on summon, so it's not like you're going to be stopping any effects. Granted, if you flip one of their Monarchs face down, they only have 1,000 defense, so it makes them a lot easier to kill. But other than that, this card isn't too good against Monarch. I've already talked about Pendulum, how crazy this card is. And another reason I want to highlight that is because what will most likely end up happening is, when your opponent Pendulum summons a massive amount of cards, Sorcerer is one of the cards they bring out. And what they usually do is that they blow up their scales. Well, by chaining this in response, they can't change their targets with Pendulum Sorcerer, so now their entire board of 5 is face down, and they just blew up their Pendulum scales as well. So depending on what they searched, they might have just possibly fucked themselves as well, because now they can't do anything with their board, and their scales, again, like I said, depending on what they search, might be a little bit fucked at the same time, which then you have the ability to then take your time, clear their monsters as you see fit, and they really can't do a whole lot about it, other than like maybe tribute one for Kieran if they happen to have one, but that's about it. Another deck I wanted to focus on was Blue Eyes, because Blue Eyes, there's actually some really good application for this card. You can flip over an alternative dragon that gets summoned, because A, it won't be able to use its ignition effect to pop one of your monsters, and B, they won't be able to synchro with it to be able to make Spirit Dragon or do any of those other shenanigans as well, since they might just have a level 1 tuner and then the set Blue Eyes Alternative Dragon, so leaves them in a pretty vulnerable position there. Another really cool trick is that it also makes it so that it's going to force the activation of their Spirit Dragon. So, say they sink into the Spirit Dragon and you flip this. They either have to let their Spirit Dragon go face down, or trigger it to dodge the effect of Floodgate Trap Hole, and basically go into something like Azure Eyes so that it doesn't die, or like Spark Dragon, which is really inoptimal because at that point in time it might not do them any good, and then that might just be the best case scenario for you because then you can make your push next turn. And again, I already mentioned this once, but Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon is something people should really look out for, and this is a card that's a way to out it, because on summon, you flip this, it doesn't target or anything, so now Chaos Max is face down, Chaos Max has 0 defense, so guess what? You're going to be able to attack right over that with ease. So, pretty cool trick there as well, especially if you're in the Blue Eyes Mirror match. You can just go ahead and attack with your own Chaos Max and do 8k damage and just basically win the game. So, that's really good. There are some downsides to this card though. The biggest one being, it's a trap, so obviously if it's a trap, it's a really slow card. You have to wait a turn to use it. Granted, it is an on-summon trap, so the chances that you are going to use it are very high, but it is still a trap. Another thing is that it's not a counter trap. Now, this is really big because we have cards like Solemn Strike, Solemn Warning, Chaos Trap Hole. These cards are all really, really fucking powerful because they're counter traps. And the fact that this isn't really kind of hurts it because your opponent can, like, use cards in response to the effect of Floodgate Trap Hole. So, for instance, say your opponent summons, like, a Cosmo Farm Girl, right? You activate this to set it face down, they can just chain it, summon out whatever they want, and you basically went minus. So, you know, it kind of sucks like that. Another instance is, like, if they overlay for Pleiades, you try to Floodgate Trap Hole it, they can still bounce something with Pleiades, so it's the fact that it's not a counter trap can really hurt the card's potential, but overall, if you look at the card as a whole, I think it's a really solid card. Now, it's not going to be like meta, like, all over the place, don't get me wrong. It's not that good. You might see it pop up in some side decks, but it's definitely a solid card all around. And, like, if we had this maybe, like, during hat format or a slower format, I think this card would see a lot of play. It's really solid, it's very, very good for people who like playing the control game, and like I said, just a really good card. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about the card. Thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.
Cimoooooooo!